लगा आज ट्यूसडे है। Shit. मतलब आप भी खाएंगे क्या पनीर पराठा? क्यों यार?
Your resume looks good. But tell me, how are you with AI tools?
AI tools. I haven't.
Hey guys, Hussein and welcome to the Tailwind CSS Masterclass. So in this course, you are going to be learning a lot about Tailwind CSS. But before we get into this course, there are just a few prerequisites which you have to know to work with Tailwind CSS. So you just have to know HTML and CSS. So if you don't know HTML and CSS, you cannot work with Tailwind CSS, okay? And if you want to learn HTML and CSS, I've got entire course on HTML and CSS, which is I guess 17-hour long or maybe 15-hour long. You can check that out if you want, or you can learn it from somewhere else if you want to. So in this course, if you want to work with Tailwind CSS, so you have to know HTML and CSS. If you don't know that, well, just take your own risk. Anyways, so now let's get into the introduction of Tailwind CSS. So what is that technology or whatever it is that we are learning? So now we are inside the homepage of Tailwind CSS, and it's saying like rapidly build modern website without ever leaving your HTML markup. So you just have to remember that, like, it's just like Tailwind CSS is just a CSS framework packed with classes like blah blah blah, which you are going to be learning a lot of classes that can be composed to build any design directly in your markup. Getting started. Okay, we will jump into that, but here you can see we have a HTML code right here. We don't have any CSS, nothing inside this file. So we just have our HTML file right here, and we just have a lot of classes right here, and the result will be this right here. Okay, so if you write all of that code, if I just copy that and paste it in my HTML file, but we have to link it with our Tailwind CSS, which I'm going to show you just in a second, so it will give us that result right here. Okay, so the founder of Tailwind CSS is Adam, and here you can learn, and here you can see a lot of great people, a lot of great developer designers are saying good stuff about Tailwind CSS. So look at this Ryan Florence, and look at this Kenzie Dot. There are a lot of great engineers, a lot of great developer UI UX people who's been using this Tailwind CSS. You can learn, or you can read through this testimonial in your spare time. Anyways, so let's just go down and build whatever you want seriously, and you can just go to this landing page and you can learn or explore a lot of stuff with that. Anyway, so I guess that will be it for the introduction. If you want to go to the Tailwind CSS homepage, so you just have to type like tailwindcss.com. Remember, Tailwind CSS, don't forget that CSS and then .com, and it will bring you to that page. And I'm going to also give you that link in the description below if you want to check that out. So now that we know what Tailwind CSS is, now the next thing which we have to do is that how can we use this Tailwind CSS? Like, how in the world can we use that? Well, for that we are going to be using two softwares. The first one will be Visual Studio Coder, and you are totally free to choose whichever kind of coder you like. You can use Sublime Text, you can use JetBrains product, you can use like Atom, or there are a lot of them. But for this course, I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code Editor for this course, just a code editor. Okay, so if you want to download and install Visual Studio Coder in your machine, I'm going to give you that link in the description below. But if you want to type it manually, so here's the link, like code.visualstudiocode.com. Okay, and it will bring you to this web page right here. And it will automatically detect your operating system by default. But if it's not, so you can just download it for Mac OS, for Windows, for Linux, and so on and so forth. So this is what I'm going to be using as my code editor. Okay, so now the next thing which you would need for this course is some sort of a browser. You can choose whichever kind of browser you like, but my recommendation will be to use Google Chrome. You can choose Safari, you can choose Firefox, Google. So we are not going to be writing any Node.js kind of stuff for this course. You are going to be also need and also Google Chrome. And for just a little bit part of this course, you are going to be also need Node.js. So we are not going to be writing any Node.js kind of stuff for this course, but we are going to be installing packages. So for that you need Node.js. So you can just write like nodejs.org/en, and it will bring you to this page right here. So you can just click on either the LTS version or the current version. So you can download any of them and it will still work. So that's it. about just a setup stuff. So now how can we get started? So I want you to just come to the main page of Tailwind CSS, and then I want you to hold Control and hit slash. So it will now gives us this search documentation pop-up box right here. Okay, so here hold Control and hit slash. So it will now gives us this search documentation pop-up box right here. Okay, so here you can just search for anything you want, but in my case I'm going to just search for like installation, install LIATION. I'm very horrible at spelling, and also when I'm speaking I can type. Anyway, so we have getting started Tailwind CSS. So I want you to just click on get started with Tailwind CSS. Okay, so it will now brings us to this link right here. So we have tailwindcss.com, then we are inside the docs, then inside the docs we are now installation page and using the post CSS. So we are not going to be using post CSS for this course, but instead we are going to be either using Tailwind CLI, or at the first fundamental section we are going to be using the play CDN. So we are going to be playing around with CDN. You can learn more about that, but it's just saying that copy this script and paste it into your own file, so it will just still work, and then you can use these classes. So I'm going to just create a file right here. I'm like folder, and I'm going to just give a name of like Tailwind CSS, and now I'm going to right click on it and open it. And so I'm going to paste it into your own files. About that, to be either using Tailwind CLI, or at the first fundamental section we are going to be using the play CDN. So we are going to be playing, or going to be using post CSS for this course, but instead we are going to be either using Tailwind CLI, or at the first fundamental section we are going to be using the play CDN. So we are going to be playing around with CDN. You can learn more about that, but it's just saying that copy this script and paste it into your own file, so it will just still work, and then you can use these classes. So I'm going to just create a file right here. I'm like folder, and I'm going to just give a name of like Tailwind CSS class. This one so we are not going to be using post CSS for this course, but instead we are going to be either using Tailwind CLI, or at the first fundamental section we are going to be using the play CDN. So we are going to be playing around with CDN. You can learn more about that, but it's just saying that copy this script and paste it into your own file, so it will just still work, and then you can use these classes. So I'm going to just create a file right here. I'm like folder, and I'm going to just give a name of like Tailwind CSS, and now I'm going to right click on it and open it. and I'm going to open it with the Visual Story Coder right here. So now we are inside, and I'm going to open it with the Visual Story Coder right here. So now we are inside this Tailwind CSS folder right here. I'm going to just create a new file, given name of like index.html. Remember, we are going to be writing all of our code inside our index.html. So now let's just write our boilerplate, and I'm going to just give a name of like Tailwind CSS master class. Okay, so we're not going to be linking to anything, but I'm going to just copy that link from here. Let me just copy that, and I'm going to just paste it right here. Okay, so I'll just paste it right here. Now what else do we have to do? I'm going to just copy this h1 with these different kind of styling with it, and let me just hide this head area from there. Right click on h1 with these different here. Okay, so I'll just paste it right here. Now what else do we have to do? I'm going to just copy this h1 with these different kind of styling with it, and let me just hide this head area from there. Right click on it and open it with a live server, and I'm going to show you that live server what it is just in a second. And here you can see we are now getting hello world with underline, but we didn't provide that. Okay, let me just remove this title and let me just write something else like I don't know, bg will be teal of 400, and also text will be white like so. So if you save our file, and here you can see we are now getting different kind of styling, but we don't have any css, we don't have any css files right here. That's because of this script cdn, I mean like Tailwind cdn right here. Okay, so if you just comment this line out and if you save that, we don't have nothing, we don't have no styling whatsoever. So if you uncomment that, and here you can see we are now getting all of these styling. Anyway, so I'm going to just remove this h1 from here, and now let me just show you the extensions which I'm going to be using throughout this course. I'm going to go to just my extension right here, and here you can see I have auto rename tag. You can install that, but that's not necessary. And I have React. You don't have to install that. You don't have to install this one, not this one, but you have to install a live server. And if you want to use the same thing which I'm using, so you have to just install this Monokai Pro. So the thing I want you to install is that live server. This is important, and also post CSS language support. This one is important, and also Prettier and Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. So I want you to just install that in your Visual Studio Coder, and then you're going to be good to go. So the next thing I want you to just install language support. This one is I want you to install is that live server. This is important, and also post this Monokai Pro live server. And if you want to use the same thing which I'm using, so you have to just install this Monokai Pro. So the thing I want you to install is that live server. This is important, and also post CSS language support. This one is important, and also Prettier and Tailwind CSS CSS IntelliSense. So I want you to just install that in your Visual Studio Coder, and then you're going to be good to go. So the next thing I want you to do is that I'm going to give you the link which will bring you to my GitHub repository, and you just have to download the starter file from there. And I'm going to also give you the finished solution, like all of the code which we are going to be writing. So if I just open this folder, so here you can see we just have two folders. So we have fundamentals, and inside this fundamental section we have all of the stuff which we are going to be learning just one by one, and also we have just 3 projects which we are going to be also building in this video. Anyway, so I'm going to give you a link to that, and you can just download that from my GitHub repository, or you can just write your code manually. So I'm going to just remove this Visual Studio Coder from there, right click on it, and let me just open that folder in my Visual Studio Coder. Okay, so say exit to that one. Alright, so now here you can see we open our folder inside Visual Studio Coder, and let me just expand this folder, and let me just go to the colors folder, and here you can see we just have index.html file right here. If I double click on that, and it will now just open this file for us, and here you can see we just have our basic Tailwind CDN right here, which we put right here, and we just have a little bit of padding. I'm going to remove that for now. Yeah, I'm going to remove that. What was that? Padding 5 frames. So, I'm not going to be providing any padding. Oh, you know I'm going to leave that right here. I put that on purpose. So I'm going to save my file. I'm going to collapse this head area. And here you can see we have different kinds of links for different kind of topic which we are going to be learning in this video. So first, we are going to be learning about the colors in different shades. Then we are going to be learning about backgrounds color. And then we are going to be learning about text decoration and all kind of that good stuff. And finally, we are going to be learning about accent colors. Okay, so let me just put that here. It's looking a bit weird, like so, and right click on it and open it with live server. So it will now open our file with a live server with and no content, nothing inside there. Okay, so we have our first link right here. So the first link will just brings us to the colors documentation of that Tailwind CSS right here. Okay, so we can also just search for that. So I want you to just hold control and hit slash, and it will give us that, and we can just search for like colors if you want to. And text decoration colors, we have text colors. So if you just click on text color, and it will now brings us to this web page right here. Like both of them are the same. Okay, not the same. So we have customizing color and we have text color. So both of them are kind of the same. So you can just choose it from here if you want to. And Tailwind CSS documentations are great. Okay, so I'm going to just go to this link, and here you can see we have different kind of colors with different kind of shades. So we have slate color, we have gray, zinc, neutral, and there are a lot of colors right here. Okay, so a lot of colors with different kind of shades with it. So in this case, let's suppose if I want to work with maybe green ones, so we have shade of 15, shade of 100, and shade of 200, 300, and 400. Okay, so now let me just write this code right here. So I'm going to also give you these link in case if you want to go to their documentation. So I'm going to just write h1 of like one period of color with different shade. Okay, so I'm going to save my file, and let me just go in here, and now here you can see we have color with different shades. And now here you can see we are getting this padding. That's because we provide that padding right here inside our style sheet. We didn't learn about a padding, so that's why I just put that padding right here, just for a little bit of spacing from the body. So that's why I put that padding. Anyway, so now let's just work with our different kind of shades. So 400 text color. So both of them are kind of the same. So you can just choose it from here if you want to. And Tailwind CSS documentations are great. Okay, so I'm going to just go to this link, and here you can see we have different kind of colors with different kind of shades. So we have slate color, we have gray, zinc, neutral, and there are a lot of colors right here. Okay, so a lot of colors with different kind of shades with it. So in this case, let's suppose if I want to work with maybe green ones, so we have shade of 15, shade of 100, and shade of 200, 300, and 400. Okay, so now let me just write this code right here. So I'm going to also give you these link in case if you want to go to their documentation. So I'm going to just write h1 of like one period of color with different shade. Okay, so I'm going to save my file, and let me just go in here, and now here you can see we have color with different shades. And now here you can see we are getting this padding. That's because we provide that padding right here inside our style sheet. We didn't learn about a padding, so that's why I just put that padding right here, just for a little bit of spacing from the body. So that's why I put that padding. Anyway, so now let's just work with our different kind of colors. So I'm going to just write a paragraph, and let me just put a tailwind in it. Okay, so if you save that, so we don't have any colors, nothing inside there, but we just have our simple paragraph right here. Let me just zoom in. Oh, you know what? Just zoom out a bit. So that's looking better. Now if I want to provide a colors to it, so here you can see we have different kind of colors. Let me just put green colors to it. So I'm going to just provide text and then the color name. So I'm going to just put like,
I have 12 emails, 30 messages, and a proposal due by 10. How am I already underwater?
I'm in the same boat.
green, and then the opacity, how much shade do you want to provide to this color. So I'm going to just write 50. So if you save our file, and now here you can see it's not showing, it's showing up right here, but it's a little bit lighter right here. But if you just provide instead of 50, if I set that to 100, and now if you save that, and it's a little bit darker than that 51, and we can just set that to 400, and here you can see we are now getting that Tailwind right here. Okay, let me just make that a bit smaller. Come on, let me just make that smaller so you guys can see everything a bit clear, like so. Let me just put it right here, like that. All right, so that is, let me just write 50, just 50, and I'm going to duplicate this line a few times. So the first value will be 50, the second value will be 100, the third value will be like 200, and we have 400, and let me just write 500. Okay, this one will be 300, and this one will be 400. Then we have a 500, and we have a 600 through 900. So let me just duplicate that a few times. Let me just write 600 and duplicate that a few times. So 600, 700, 800, and 900, and we don't have no more shades in there. I'm going to remove that last line, and now here you can see we just give them the class of text, then dash, and then we give them a color name, and then we just provide our shade to it. So now if you save our file, and now here you can see we get a different kind of shades, like we have 50% shade, 100, 200, 300, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is how you can play around with that. And by the way, if you want to change the color to like something else, like there are a lot of colors right here, let's suppose if you want to work with violet, so I'm going to just copy that, and I'm going to just select that and hit Control D, and it will just select that, and I'm going to just replace that violet color to it, but it will be a lowercase violet. And now if you save that, now let's just check them out, and here you can see the color is changed to violet. So now if you want to provide a teal color, so you can also provide a teal, and now if you save that, and here you can see we are now getting a teal color. If you want to provide red color, blue color, green color, yellow color, whatever color you like, so I'm going to save that. And here you can see we are now getting different kinds of colors right here. So this is going to be it for the color section. So now let's just learn about a background color. So I'm going to just hold Control and click on this link. So it will now open that link right here. I'm going to say bye-bye to that one and this one as well. And now if you want to provide a background color to something, it doesn't matter if there's a paragraph or whichever kind of element you have. So if you want to provide a background color to it, so we have a few properties for that. Let me just expand that. So here you can see, first of all, you're going to be writing a BG, then dash, and then the color name, and then opacity for that color or the shade of that color. Okay, so this is how it works. Let me just show you that real quick. So let me just write first of all a new title, or let me just write a BR in here just for the breaking. BR HR for horizontal line and BR. So our file, let's just work with our background colors. I'm gonna write H1 and then 2 of background colors. Okay, like so. I'm gonna zoom in a bit in this case. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I guess that would be fine. Let me just write a paragraph, and I'm going to give him a few clauses like, I don't know, I'm going to give him a BG of pink. Let me just write 600, and now let's just check how that will look like. So Tailwind. And now if you save our file and check him out, and here you can see now we provide a background of pink to it. If you want to change the text color, so for that we can just use text color. Let me just write text of totally white, and now if you save that, and it will now change the color to totally white, and the background color is kind of a pink color, but we provide opacity of 600. We can change that to 400, and here you can see it's looking a little bit slighter lighter, and this is how it looks like. Okay, so we have 500. Let me just go to the 500, and this is how it looks like. Okay, let me just duplicate this line and change the color to red and change the opacity to like 400 maybe. and text will be white. So I'm going to save my file, and this is how it looks like, kind of an orangish color, you know. It's a red color, but we just changed the opacity to 400. Let me just duplicate that one more time and change that to blue, and the opacity will be 600 in this case. So if you save that, and now here you can see we are now getting that blue color right here. Okay, so what else do we have to do? Let me just copy these 2 BR and 1 HR from there, and I'm going to paste it right here. And now let's just learn about text decoration and all of that kind of a good stuff. I'm going to hold Control or Command, and I'm going to just click on this link, and it will now open that link right here. So we have different kind of decoration right here. So we have underline, we have overline, we have line through, we have no underline right here. So now let's just work with that. And here you can see it will work in a CSS like this. So work in a CSS like this. We have text decoration line, it will be now set to underline. Then we have text decoration line, it will be now set to overline. Then we have line through and none. Okay, so this is going to be the result of that. Let me just write that, and then you'll get to know what I'm talking about. Let me just write h1 here and 3 period text decoration like so. And now inside this text decoration, or not inside but underneath this text decoration, I'm going to write a paragraph with the class of line through. Okay, and I'm going to put like tailwind in it. And now if you save our file, and now here you can see we are now getting this line through right here. I'm going to duplicate this line of code, and I'm going to change that to underline. So I'm going to write like underline, and now if you save that, and now here you can see we are now getting underline right here. And now let me just duplicate that one more time and change that to like line through, and we can also change the decoration color of it. So I'm going to just write decoration, and then the color will be, I don't know, like purple will be fine. And I'm going to just give him a little bit of shading of 400. So if you save our file, and now here you can see we now change the color of that decoration to pink, like purple. We can also change it to blue, save it, and this is how the blue will look like. So we can just play around with that. Anyways, so we have underline. Now let's just learn about overline. So I'm going to duplicate this underline right here, and I'm going to change that to overline. And now if you save our file, and now here you can see it will now give us overline. You know what, I'm going to comment this line out. I'm going to also comment that line out and save our file. And now here you can see it will now give us line overline right here. I'm going to just undo these steps. And now if you save our file, so this is how we can play around with that. So now let me just write another paragraph with the class of text will be purple and 600. Let me just write 600, 600, not 400. And now let me just give him underline class to it, and also decoration will be now set to purple of 400. Okay, and now let me just put a tailwind inside that. So if you save our file, and here you can see everything is now purple right here. Okay, let me just zoom out a bit so you guys can see everything a bit better. So here you can see we just provide a few classes like text will be purple with a shade of 600, and it will be also underlined, and the underlined text will be also purple with a 400 shade to it. Okay, so now let's just learn about accent color. Okay, so if you just click on that, it will now brings us to this page right here, and we have a few utility classes for accent color. So we can just play around with that. Everything is like the same as we learned. Let me just click on this show less, and here you can see this is going to be the browser default checkbox right here, and we can also change the color of that by using these accent color right here. Okay, so first of all, we are going to be writing like the accent color. First of all, we are going to be writing an accent, and then we are going to be writing a dash, and then the color name, and then the opacity or the shade of that color. Okay, so now let's just work with that. I'm going to copy this HR and BR from there, and I'm going to put it right here. Okay, like so, and I'm going to also put it underneath this so that we get a little bit of spacing while we are working on that. So let me just write H1 of 4 accent colors. Okay, so let me just get my input, and we want to get our checkbox in this case. And you know what, I'm not going to give any classes. So if you save that, and here you can see we have our default browser checkbox right here, but we can also change the color of that. Let me just duplicate that, and let's just write a class of, I don't know, accent first of all, and then indigo, and we can change the shade to be like 500 would be fine. And if you save our file, And now if you click on this one, this is a blue, and now, okay, so it's a little bit it's indigo. You can see that, you can see the difference. Like this one is blue totally, and this one is a bit indigo. Let me just change the color to something else, like I don't know, yellow. And now if you save that, and now if I click on this one, this is the browser default one. And now if I click on that one, so here you can see we are now getting this kind of a yellow color. We can also duplicate that and change the color to something else, like I don't know, red would be fine. So save that. This one will be the browser default, this one will be yellow, and this one will be red. We can also change it to like something else, maybe I don't know, teal, maybe my favorite color, teal. Save that, and now if you click on that, so it will now use us teal color right there. So these are accent color, so you can work with that. And we can also provide a default, what do we call it, so we can also provide default checked or attributed. So if you just write checked, so this one is now checked. Okay, yeah, this one is a default one, and the second one is checked, so we can cut that from there. Or you know what, let me just pass it in all of these areas. So let me just write checked and save it, and all of them are now checked. And I'm going to also put it right here. So save our file, and everything is now totally checked. So now we are totally done with text color. We learn about a text color, we learn about a background color, we also learn about a few declaration or decoration, whatever you want to call it, and we also learn about accent colors. And if you want to learn more about these colors and stuff, so I've already give you different kinds of links for the different kinds of documentations.
If you use Tailwind CSS, तुम्हें पता होगा उसके अंदर एनिमेशन करना इज अ प्रॉब्लम, राइट? तुम्हें बहुत सारी मल्टीपल क्लासेस एक साथ जोड़नी पड़ती हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल अगर रोटेट करना है तुम्हें, तो रोटेट, ट्रांजिशन, डिले काइंड ऑफ खुद से क्रिएट करनी पड़ती है, और चेंजेस भी डालने हो इसके अंदर, देन तुम्हें खुद से की फ्रेम्स बनाने पड़ेंगे. देयर इज नथिंग यू कैन यूज जो ऑटोमेटेड हो, राइट? बट नो, देयर इज अ पैकेज Tailwind एनिमेट. यू कैन यूज दिस पैकेज, मस्त है. इसके अंदर प्री डिफाइंड क्लासेस मिल जाएंगे तुम्हें, फेड इन, जूम इन, स्लाइड आउट, टॉप, ड्यूरेशन, डिले, एवरीथिंग सिंपल टू यूज. या फिर अनदर पैकेज Tailwind मोशन, इनकी एक वेबसाइट भी है. आई शेयर द लिंक इन माय ब्रॉडकास्ट, वहां चेकआउट कर लेना. rombo.co/tailwind. इसमें क्या है, तुम्हें नीचे एक कस्टम एनिमेशन क्रिएट करने का मिल जाएगा. स्लाइडर्स यूज करके क्रिएट करो एंड देन कॉपी क्लासेस कर लो. फॉर एग्जांपल अगर मैंने ये किया है, तो क्लासेस दे देंगे, इनको यूज करके यू कैन एनिमेट. एंड ये बिल्कुल फ्री है यूज करना. एक और फ्री चीज पता क्या है, मेरा Hey, so someone asked me how to learn Tailwind CSS. According to my experience, you can never learn Tailwind. Or this is for like any programming language. You can understand things and then use Google to get the syntax and use that. For example, for Tailwind, you should understand CSS first properly. And then after that, you can just open Tailwind docs and search for whatever you want. For example, we have a button for now. Okay. And I'll go to the search option. I want a border. I know CSS. That's why I know I want a border. This is called border property. Okay. So for Tailwind, if I want 4 pixel border, I can use border 4, but I want like 1 pixel, so only border. So we can add a class name as border. Hope we got a border. And next is I want to have some padding also. So for all the sides, let's see what we have. Yeah, we have P3 for padding on all the sides. How I know it's for all the sides? Because it says that this applies this class for CSS P3. I want corners to be rounded. Oh, sorry. Rounded is like for Tailwind. Border radius, right? For Hey, so someone asked me how to learn Tailwind.
वेबसाइट बनाना एक जटिल कार्य है। होस्टिंगर चुनें। अपनी वर्डप्रेस साइट होस्ट करने का आसान।
What if you could build clean and responsive UIs so that you'd never again have to Google how to center a div? Sounds like a dream, right? Well, let's make that dream a reality. I get it. Tutorial after tutorial, you're still struggling with responsive layouts, custom styling, and making the most out of Tailwind CSS. That's exactly why I created this complete and updated Tailwind CSS course. Not just another tutorial, but the one that finally clicks. This isn't your typical, here's a bunch of utility classes video. You don't fully understand how Tailwind works behind the scenes, aren't sure if you're following the best practices, struggle with dark mode, theming, or custom styles, feel lost when using pseudo classes, media queries, or dynamic utilities, rely on JavaScript for things that Tailwind can handle natively, or maybe you just want to master Tailwind CSS instead of just messing with it. Then you are the one I created this course for. By the end of this free YouTube tutorial, you won't be just copying and pasting classes. You'll understand exactly how and why they work while mastering Tailwind's fundamentals. You'll learn how to structure Tailwind CSS projects the right way, the key principles behind utility-first styling, a complete guide to responsive layouts, how to implement dark mode and custom themes, and a bunch of pro tips to speed up your workflow. But that's just part 1. Very soon, the entire course and much more will be available as a structured, lesson-based experience on our brand new platform, JS Mastery Pro. Over there, you'll find quizzes. Our brand new platform will be available just part 1. Very soon, the entire course and much more will be available as a structured, lesson-based experience on our brand new platform, JS Mastery Pro. Over there, you'll find quizzes, interactive exercises, additional deep dives, and you'll also get access to the full build and deploy section where we take everything you've learned and build a fully responsive, professional landing page from scratch. You'll build a sleek navbar and a hero section, a trusted by companies section, a detailed how it works breakdown, testimonials and impressive stats, a powerful call to action, and a polished footer with a full light and dark mode support. And depending on when you're watching this, you can either join the waitlist or, if you're lucky, jump right in and start learning on JS Mastery Pro. The link is in the description.
So if you want to
description key, jump right in and start learning on JS. Either join the waitlist, or if you're lucky, jump right in and start learning.
AI is changing the game for app development.
If you're trying to learn Tailwind and you're using lengthy courses and videos, you're actually doing it wrong. In this video, I want to talk about why that's the wrong approach to learning Tailwind and show you a different approach, which is only going to take you about 30 minutes and you'll be mastering Tailwind by the time you're done. Welcome back to Web Dev Simplified. My name's Kyle and my job is to simplify the web for you so you can start building your dream project sooner. And as you can see here, I just have a simple search for Tailwind course on YouTube, and there's tons of courses out there, 4 hours long, 3 hours long, hour and a half long. And I don't have anything against these particular courses, but that's a long time to spend trying to learn just one small portion of a tech stack that you're going to be using. Especially because usually if the video is 4 hours long, it's probably going to take you like 8 hours to get through it and actually really get everything into your brain. That's a lot of time to dedicate to Tailwind, and you don't need to spend nearly that much time. The same exact thing happens on Udemy. You can see most of these courses are like 12 hours, 7 hours, 6 hours, and so on. So they're much longer than they actually need to be. So what is the solution? Well, the solution is simply just to use the Tailwind documentation. And I know that sounds like a bad solution, but let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. For the most part, Tailwind is just CSS. That's all it is. All Tailwind is just a bunch of fancy classes that they added that map almost one-to-one to CSS. So if you already understand CSS, you pretty much already understand Tailwind. There's only about a small, maybe 5% of Tailwind that you need to learn in order to go from knowing CSS to mastering Tailwind. And of course, what you could do is you could go through and read every single article and page of the documentation. But as you can see, this is a massive list of documentation on the side here. It would take you forever to go through all this information, which is why I don't recommend you do that at all. Like I said, if you know CSS, you already know Tailwind. For example, if you're starting to write code in Tailwind and you want to get up and started, obviously go to the getting started documentation. There's like 4 or 5 steps that you need to follow, and that'll give you Tailwind working in whatever framework that you happen to be using. As you can see, there's documentation for pretty much everything that you need to do, or you can just jump in with a CDN and get up and started super easily. But once you have that simple 5-step process done, then you need to say, okay, I want to style something and I want to add some padding. How do I add padding? All you need to do is just go to the documentation and just search for padding. Hit enter, and as you can see, here's a list of all of the different padding classes. There's a ton because padding is massive, but you can see all the different things you can do. So if you know that you want to add padding on the left, well, you can just know that it's going to be PL0, as you can see right here, padding left 0, or you can say PL1, and you're going to add a little bit more padding on the left and the right. And even here in the documentation, if you read the first paragraph that it usually has, it's going to essentially explain everything you need to know about that particular property. So you already know that padding is a thing from your CSS skills, so you can just come here and search for padding. And if you hit Control-K on the documentation, it opens up the search. So you can again search for margin, for example, or we can search for let's say text color. So we just say text color, and there we go. There's all the different text color properties that I need to understand. So just to get up and started with Tailwind is incredibly easy. Like I said, all you need to do is just go to the installation steps. Like I said, it's 5 steps, maybe 4 or 5, depending on what framework you're using. And then you have Tailwind installed, and you can just start looking at the documentation to try to figure out exactly what all the different properties are. Now, if it sounds like a huge pain to constantly jumping from your editor to the actual browser to check all the different documentation for things, one thing that you'll really love is if you're in VS Code, they actually have an extension called Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, and that essentially gives you autocomplete for all the different Tailwind styles out there. So if you're inside of anything and you want to add a class, for example, I can just hit Control Space, and now I have all the Tailwind stuff. So if I type text, for example, and I actually spell it properly, and then let's say I want to have a color that's going to be blue, so I can say text blue, and now all the colors are showing up, and I can say, oh, I want this one. Or if you're doing some padding, you can say PX, and okay, here, I want maybe PX56, for example. So if you kind of have an idea of what these different properties are called, for example, I want this to be a bold font. I know that has something to do with font weight, so I'm just going to come in here, type font, and oh, look right there, font bold. It's that easy. So just by using your CSS knowledge combined with this IntelliSense, you can get about 75% of the way there. For the other 25%, well, all you need to do is just open up the documentation and search for the particular thing. For example, position is a little bit confusing because it doesn't use the word position. You just need to know it just has absolute, for example. Now, some people don't like using the documentation for this particular stuff, so there are cheat sheets out there that do essentially the same thing. As you can see here, if I want to look at font weight, I just click on this and it gives me all the different styles. It has the same information as the documentation. I just find the documentation has it laid out better, as well as has additional information, so I pretty much never use any cheat sheets. Now, I did mention that this will get you 95 as it laid out better, as well as has It gives me all the different styles. It has the same information as the documentation. I just find the documentation has it laid out better, as well as has additional information, so I pretty much never use any cheat sheets. Now, I did mention that this will get you 95% of the way there when it comes to using Tailwind. The other 5% comes in the more advanced features of Tailwind that don't really map super well one-to-one to CSS, and that's what I'm going to cover for the rest of this video. I'm just going to go over them really quickly so you can understand how to use them all. So if
Need to run Windows on your Mac? Parallels Desktop
Hero section, a trusted by companies section, a detail where we take everything you've learned and build a fully responsive, professional landing. There, you'll find quizzes, interactive exercises, additional deep dives, and you'll also get access to the full build and deploy section where we take everything you've learned and build a fully responsive, professional landing page from scratch. You'll build a sleek navbar and a hero section, a trusted by companies section, a detailed how it works breakdown, testimonials and impressive stats, a powerful call to action, and a polished footer with a full light and dark mode support. And depending on when you're watching this, you can either join the waitlist or, if you're lucky, jump right in and start learning on JS Mastery Pro. The link is in the description. So, whether you're a complete beginner or an experienced developer looking to master Tailwind, this course will take you from what's a utility class to watch me build this complex layout in minutes. So, what are you waiting for? Utility class to watch me build this complex layout in minutes. So, what are you waiting for? Let's dive right in and master one of the most essential skills in modern web development. Tailwind CSS isn't just another styling framework. It's a utility-first ideology that makes building modern, responsive websites faster and easier. Unlike Bootstrap, and Design, or Material UI, which come with predefined components and styles, Tailwind gives you complete control through small, reusable utility classes. So instead of writing custom CSS from scratch, you can simply combine these classes to style your site exactly how you want. This approach has completely transformed the way developers write CSS. Sure, UI kits are great at first, but tweaking them to match your design, that's a headache. Let's be honest, default UI component libraries stick out like fast food menus. They work, but they all look the same. Tailwind, on the other hand, is like a fully stocked kitchen. It gives you the ingredients, not the prepackaged meal. No more rigid, no more cookie-cutter designs. You get the flexibility to customize everything while keeping your codebase clean and maintainable. Still, if you want to use some ready-made components, Tailwind's ecosystem has exploded with component libraries that support it. Everything from Tailwind UI and Headless UI, and of course everyone's favorite, ShotCN. These libraries let you build UIs faster than ever without sacrificing customization. But do real companies actually use Tailwind? Absolutely. From OpenAI to Shopify, Loom, The Verge, Turbo, GitHub, Microsoft, and even NASA, Tailwind CSS is the go-to choice for many big companies. The official example showcase highlights some of the biggest brands using Tailwind CSS in production. So, are you ready to take your styling game to the next level? Let's dive right in. So, how does Tailwind CSS actually work? Before we dive in, let's quickly compare traditional CSS with Tailwind's utility-first approach. So, how do we normally write CSS? Well, we create some elements and assign them CSS classes. Something like a div with a container and an h1 with a container heading. And then we define those classes in CSS, dot container, give it a display flex, justify content center, you know the drill. And you can also style the heading. Here, container and container headings are just custom classes with predefined styles. But now let's rethink that with a utility-first mindset. What if instead of writing custom class names, we broke styles into small, reusable utility classes? Something like .flex will set a display of flex, item center will set the align items to center, and so on. You can do the same thing for colors or even font sizes. With these utilities in place, we can now structure our HTML like this. You can create a div and give it class names of flex, justify center, item center. And the same thing goes with a p tag. See the difference? We're still using classes, but instead of defining custom class names, we're composing styles directly with utility classes. And this is exactly how Tailwind CSS works. Every Tailwind class is just a predefined CSS rule. For example, when we use flex, Tailwind generates that property behind the scenes. And I get how this might feel like just a lot of extra work, but trust me, it'll save you hours because you won't have to worry about class names, structuring styles with the BEM methodology, or managing gigantic CSS files. You can just use the utilities and Tailwind does the rest. But Tailwind simplicity is also a cause for a lot of misconceptions around it. There's a common myth when talking about Tailwind, and that is, aren't all of these just inline styles? We're basically writing everything on a single tag, inline. So why can't we use just a regular CSS, applying a style property with a padding of 10 and a color of blue. Well, it's not really the same, because this doesn't allow you to use more advanced properties like pseudo classes, which we'll explore later on, and they also don't give you access to media queries. But even more importantly, inline styles cannot be reused. You have to rewrite them on every single element where you need them. But Tailwind CSS utility classes, on the other hand, are completely reusable, which means that you can create a small set of reusable CSS classes and then use them on whichever element you want across the entire application. Hopefully, you will never again think that Tailwind is the same as inline styles, and you're actually excited to see what more it brings to the table. So let's dive deeper into this crash course so that very soon you can build a real-world project so you can truly master it.
मैं सिर्फ 3 घंटा आपसे मांग रहा हूं. इस 3 घंटे के अंदर मैं आपको एडवांस एक्सेल के फॉर्मूलाज के साथ एआई और
Before we dive into complex layouts, let's start with Tailwind Play, an interactive online playground for testing Tailwind CSS styles. I'll put the link to it down below this lesson, and once you're there, you can delete all of the pre-generated code. Instead, let's start with a basic hello world. So far, super plain and super boring. So let's bring Tailwind into the mix. As I already mentioned, Tailwind provides a set of predefined utility classes to style elements without having to write custom CSS. For example, we can very easily style this H1. Just start by giving it a class and start typing text dash. And immediately, you'll see a dropdown with all of the related utilities. This will include alignment, font sizes, colors, and more, making it super easy to explore and apply all of these different styles. So let's apply a property of text dash center, text dash LG, as well as text dash blue dash 400. And just so we don't have to stare at this white screen while everything else is dark, I'll put it right below and head over into CSS and target the body element by giving it a background color. 10172A is this nice Tailwind CSS color. And now if you want to apply some kind of a margin to this text element, you can say margin top 2 maybe, which will apply a slight margin to push it from the top. And you can easily change the text color to something like cyan 400. That's looking great. But now the main question is, how does Tailwind CSS actually work behind the scenes? Well, at the bottom here, there's a generated CSS tab. Click on it and it'll expand. Here, you can find different sections. All includes everything Tailwind generates, including default styles and theme-based utilities. Next, there's theme, which contains the Tailwind CSS built-in theme variables like colors, spacing, and more. There's base, which includes global styles like removing default margins from the body element. And then there's the custom component styles. I'll teach you how that works later. And finally, the most important part, which are the utilities. It contains the actual CSS generated for each utility that you use. For example, right now in our HTML, we have only text center, text LG, cyan 400, and margin top of 2. So let's see how each one of these utility classes looks like when converted to plain CSS. MT2 applies a margin top where they calculate some kind of a spacing here. This is super nice because they're using CSS variables to make the whole system super modular. They're not using absolute values. Text center simply applies a text align property of center. Text LG not only changes the font size, which is what you would assume, but also modifies the line height to make it look better. And then cyan 400 simply changes the color. So if you quickly change this color from cyan to maybe something like green, you can see that it automatically gets replaced with another style right here. And what that means is that Tailwind CSS generates styles on the fly, only for the classes we actually use. This keeps our CSS lean and efficient. Think of it like a Thanos finger snap. Change a class and the styles adjust instantly. Now let's continue experimenting with some background colors, spacings, font styles, and borders. Create a new div element that'll wrap the H1 that we have right here. That'll look something like this, and we can indent it properly. Now we can apply a class to this div and give it a bg-violet-200 color. We can also give it an h of 10 for the height, a w full, so it takes the full width of the container, border-2, border-violet-600, rounded-md to round up the corners a bit, margin y of 4 to divide it a bit from the top and bottom, and padding of 2. We can also change the H1 a bit by giving it a font of mono, font-extra bold. And there we go. It says hello world. And we never entered another file. We did everything within this HTML, or later on this will be JSX or even TSX file, because Tailwind is widely used in React and Next.js. So let me actually break down what happened here. W full and H10 are width and height properties. The full simply sets the width to 100% of the container, and H10 simply provides about 2.5 rem or about 40 pixels of height. BG Violet 200 applies a background color, and 200 stands for a shade of that color. Next, Border 2 and Border Violet 600 simply apply a border, first by giving it a border width, and of course, this gives it a border color. Rounded MD applies a medium border radius to make the corners rounded. Margin Y of 4 is interesting. It applies a margin, but why margin Y? Well, you could have done margin top, which would apply something on the top. You can do margin left for left, right for right, or bottom for bottom. Or you can use Y for top and bottom, like Y-axis, or X for left and right. It's super flexible. The full notation looks something like this. You say M, and then you can either apply top, right, bottom, left, or Y or X, and then the size you want to apply it. And the same thing goes with the padding. You can say padding, top, bottom, left, right, X, Y, whatever you want to do, or if you don't apply anything, it'll apply it on all sides. Finally, we have text center, which you already know what it does. Font simply applies a font family, and this changes the font weight. And while we're here, we can also have a quick lesson on margins and paddings. Many developers confuse the two. Margin is an external spacing, which pushes the element away from others, while padding is internal spacing, so it adds space inside of an element. So if I put this on the right side, so it's easier to see what's happening, and if I increase margin Y to something like 10, you'll see that it pushes more from top, but also from the bottom, even though we cannot see it. And if I increase the padding to something like padding of 6, you'll see that it adds more internal space. But now, if we truly want to center this text, we also need to make this div a flex container and give it a justify center, as well as items center properties. There we go. So now you know a bit more about different types of properties that we can apply to different elements using Tailwind. The possibilities are really endless, and even though it might seem like I'm coming up with these names off the top of my head, memorizing them is super simple once you get the hang of it. And of course, another pro tip is if you want to figure out what the actual CSS value of a specific property is, just hover over it and you'll see exactly what it does. They even provided this nice comment to tell you exactly how many rems or pixels padding of 6 applies. This was simple and fairly high level. But in the next lesson, I'll let you know the Tailwind superpower.
Let me show you how I'm using Grammarly's AI tools when I'm feeling less than creative at work.
Tailwind CSS isn't just about predefined utility classes. It's also incredibly flexible thanks to its just-in-time compiler, also known as JIT. The JIT compiler generates styles on demand, which means that Tailwind only includes the exact styles your project uses, keeping your final CSS small and efficient. For example, let's say you want to rename this H1 to jsmastery.pro, which is the URL of a code platform we've been building for months that allows you to create custom learning paths. And also, let's say you want to give it a font size of something like 13 pixels, which is not a predefined Tailwind utility. Normally, you would have to create an inline style or give it a custom class, but with the JIT compiler, you can do this instead. Text-13 pixels within square brackets, just like this. Or you can do something like 20 or even 30. It is completely up to you. Any value you want, you can apply it automatically, and the JIT compiler will add it to the generated CSS, removing all the unused style, only keeping the used ones, keeping your CSS bundle as small as possible. So why is this JIT compiler such a big thing? Well, first of all, because it optimizes performance, generating only what you need. It gives you faster build times because it doesn't need to precompile thousands of different classes. It supports arbitrary values, which means that you can pass any custom size, color, or property to make your website super unique. And it works seamlessly in both development and production. And the best part is that it is completely built into Tailwind by default without any extra setup. So now that you understand the core mechanics behind how Tailwind CSS works, let's move on to layouts and Flexbox, because knowing how to style elements is useless if you don't know how to position them. Tailwind provides powerful utilities for structuring layouts with positioning, display properties, flexbox, and grid. So let's go over them one by one. Most of the time, you'll see yourself using display, position, and maybe sometimes overflow CSS properties. So let's first talk about positioning. Positioning defines where an element appears relative to its container or the viewport. There's a position of relative, which moves the element relative to its normal position. Then there's absolute, which moves it to the nearest parent. There's also a fixed position, which sticks the element to the viewport so it doesn't scroll, as well as position sticky, which makes it behave normally until scrolled to a certain point. For example, if you create a red 10 by 10 square and you give it a top 0 property, it'll be fixed at the top of the page regardless of your scroll position. Then, much more important than position, there's display, and specifically flexbox in Tailwind. It determines how an element behaves in terms of layout and visibility within the document. It's one of those must-have CSS skills for creating responsive layouts, and the moment you master flex, well, you can flex on everyone. There's display block, which simply takes up the full width. There's display inline, which behaves like text, which means that it doesn't have any width or height. And finally, there are two very powerful display properties. The first one is flex, which enables flexbox, and the second one is display grid, which enables the CSS grid properties. So let's start by exploring flexbox in action. I'll create a new div that has a class equal to flex, which just enables flexbox. Then I'll give it justify-end, which will align the items within the container to the right. And finally, space-x-6, which will add some spacing in between the elements. So let's add that inner element of div, and we can also just immediately close it. I'll give it a class equal to h of 16 for the height, w of 16 for the width, rounded-full to make it into a circle, and a bg of blue 500. Now I'll duplicate this div right below 2 times. And immediately you'll see 3 different circles. Let's also apply a bit of a margin top of 2 to give them some space. And let's change the colors. Let's go with blue, orange, and green. There we go. Oh, and it looks like I almost remade the letterbox logo. That was fun. But hey, just by putting these 3 different divs right here, you can play with the flex layout. Maybe change it from justify end to justify around, baseline, between, center, and evenly. Whatever you want to do, you can totally do it and see it happening live right here. But what if you want to have a column-based layout where the elements are not one next to another, but rather one on top of the other? Well, you can do that very easily by assigning it a flex-col property, which stands for column. And of course, if you want to modify how the elements appear on a column, instead of using justify properties, you can use items-properties. So you can center them, end them, start them, stretch them. You can do whatever you want with it. For now, I can just put justify center, item center as well, and give it a space y of 6 instead of x of 6. And now we have 3 vertical circles. Now these circles could be anything. They could be divs, they could be images. You're free to move the content however you'd like across the screen, allowing you to create any kind of layout. Even this Tailwind screen that you're seeing right now is just a series of rectangles. In CSS, everything is a rectangle. See this part right here? Well, it's a rectangle. This preview window, also a rectangle. This button, well, I think you can guess it. And that's exactly what makes flexbox positioning super useful. And if you want to practice some flexbox or learn it for the first time, there's a game called Flexbox Froggy that helps you learn flexbox. The goal of the game is simple. You just have to move the frog from water to its pond. So in this case, you need to apply a justify content of flex end. And trust me, the levels get much more difficult, so you'll have to really practice it and know your way around it. This is a property that we used not that long ago. It's justify content space around. Okay, it's good. My CSS game is still on point. Now, let's practice some CSS grid within Tailwind. Transforming this code to a CSS grid is super simple. Let's just remove the flex and flex col properties, as well as the item center and justify center. Heck, we can remove everything. And let's just apply a grid property. as well as grid-calls-3, which stands for 3 columns. And we can also apply a gap of 2 in between the elements. We can also give it a margin top of 2 to divide it from the top, and a margin X of 2 to divide it from the corners. Now, what's cool about this grid is that if you don't provide it the width, it'll naturally expand to fill its space. You can do similar things with Flexbox, but grid makes it super simple to fill out the entire width or height of something. So, in simple words, this code right here creates a 3-column layout. You can change it to something like 5, which will make it a 5-column layout, giving us space for 2 more elements. As with Flexbox, there's many other grid properties that you can use, from columns, rows, flows, and more, to truly master it. And if you're new to CSS Grid, well, there's no frogs here, but a grid garden. It works very similarly to Flexbox Froggy, but it doesn't have as good of a name. Here, you can move different things around to grow your garden. So with that in mind, you now know the basics of how we can position your elements within a layout using grid and Flexbox in Tailwind CSS. Of course, these are just native CSS properties, but Tailwind makes it super simple to use them. How to make your websites look good on all different kinds of devices? Well, Tailwind makes responsive design easy by using mobile-first breakpoints. It gives you a set of predefined device widths, ranging from small, medium, and large to extra large. What's cool about them is that by default, they set a min width, which means that it sets styles for a specific screen width or larger, not smaller.
होस्टिंगर की मैनेज्ड वर्डप्रेस होस्टिंग कड़क है। कितने फीचर्स थे? सरकार 3 फीचर्स।
Okay, that means that we're talking about a mobile-first methodology. Still, you're open to use something known as a max width to set up styles for a specific screen width or smaller. But as I said, Tailwind is mobile-first, so the min width queries will be applied by default. Now, let me show you how that works in practice. Let's say that we have a div, and that div will render a p tag that'll say something like, I appear on screens wider than 768 pixels. Let's also give it a class equal to text-white. Perfect, here it is. Now, how would we actually make this piece of text do what it says it's gonna do? Well, very easily. By giving this outer div a class of medium devices block, but typically hidden. So what this means is that we will apply a display of none, but only on medium devices where media width is greater than or equal to 48 rem, which is about 770 pixels, then we change the display to block. So now if I move this around a bit, you can see the width on the top right, and if I expand it over 768 pixels, there we go, you can see that it appears right here. So these 2 characters in a column right here are what's called a media query. Media queries allow you to change CSS properties depending on the screen width. Now, on top of being able to change the display properties of certain elements, using media queries, you can change whatever you want. So let me make this always visible, but let's change the text background color depending on different screen sizes. We start with small, and on small, we can give it a background of something like, well, you know what? We can already start with these predefined colors. I'll go from 500 all the way until the end. So let's start with 500. And now if we go over 640 pixels, you'll be able to see it right here. But what happens if we change it to medium, something like BG Amber of 700? Well, then if you go even wider, you'll see that it'll change once again. So there's one thing that we can deduct from this, and that is that larger screen sizes will always override the smaller ones. Even though here it says that the width has to be greater than 40 rems, which it is in this case as well, but still, this one is not being applied because the medium one is being applied because it's greater than 48 rems, even though both of them are true. But you can also flip it around on its head by using the max width media queries. As I said, by default, Tailwind uses min width, but if you say max SM or if you say max MD, then it'll be applying that only if the width is lower than that specific size. So now you can see that currently it's like this, but then we increase it, it changes again. So you have 2 different ways of targeting different elements. Tailwind's doc page on this is super useful. You can see the different breakpoints that they recommend, and you have a couple of examples of a simple marketing page component that uses a stack layout on a small screen and a side-by-side layout on larger screens. which means that you have full control over how it works. The only thing you have to do is play with the media queries. They even give you a full explanation of that example. And right below, they mentioned the mobile-first approach that I was telling you about. This means that unprefixed utilities, like uppercase, take effect on all screen sizes, while prefixed utilities, like empty uppercase, only take effect on specified breakpoint, the end above being the keyword right here. So getting back to our example, without using the max prefix, just using the regular small and medium, small will only work on small and above, and medium will only work on medium and above. Keep that in mind. If there's only one thing you take away from this lesson, then it's that Tailwind uses a mobile-first approach, and it looks at the media query and above. Or if you want to switch it around, then you apply a max before it. And I might be repeating myself a bit here, but I think it's important to dive a bit deeper into this. Because while it doesn't click, it's going to feel weird. So Tailwind even has another section on it. What surprises people the most about the mobile-first approach is that to style something for mobile, you need to use the unprefixed version of a utility, not the small prefix version. Don't think of small as on small screens. Think of it as at the small breakpoint. So do not use small to target mobile devices, because this will only center text on screens 640 and wider, not on small screens. Rather, use unprefixed utilities to immediately target mobile by default, okay? So the text will center on mobile by default, and then only change it if you want to change it for larger devices. And I think this dives right into the reason of what mobile-first approach means in the first place, and that is that it's a good idea to implement the mobile layout for a design first, and then layer on any changes that make sense for small screens, followed by medium screens, and so on. And of course, it's super important to mention that you can fully customize your breakpoints. If you want to make sure that it works on specific types of devices, or your specific layout breaks on specific widths, well, you can fully customize the exact breakpoints you want to add, such as extra small or even XXL. And remember the just-in-time compiler? It allows you to provide arbitrary values. Which means that you can say min 320 pixels and then apply something for that specific screen width. Pretty cool, right? Well, with that in mind, you know more about media queries than most people out there. So put it to good use, and remember to design and develop mobile first.
Hey developers, join us for the biggest AI competition with over $10,000 in cash prizes. Yep,
Apparently, we developers love dark mode. A recent study on medium.com reveals that more than 70% of software engineers decide to use the dark mode theme for their IDEs. But it's not just the IDEs. We love dark websites too. So let me teach you how to apply styles for different themes like light and dark mode. Tailwind supports dark mode natively. You just have to add the dark keyword before a class. Let me show you. I'll create a div, and this div will have a class equal to BG white, and in there I can say something like dark mode disabled, because it's white, right? But now, the only thing I have to do is say on dark mode, apply a background of black. And with that, we have technically enabled our dark mode, but we cannot see the text. So what do we have to do? Well, by default, we can make the text black, but on dark mode, we can make it white by saying text-white. And with that, our dark mode is working. And the way it knows that I want to have my dark mode enabled is based on system or browser preferences. So on your operating system or in your browser, you can try to switch to light mode. My eyes hurt. And immediately you'll see that this part also got changed to white. Or if I decide to switch to dark mode, that's much better. This has changed immediately, just by prefixing the dark properties. But now, often in our websites, you'll also have to create your own toggle to allow the weirdos to switch to the light mode. Just kidding, I like using it sometimes too. So to make this work, we'll have to modify the configuration to include a special dark class. There are two ways to toggle the dark mode